So I'm going to try mixing some reds right now. I'm going to start with this brighter red because I want to show you that you cannot make a color brighter than what you already have. So let's see how bright the red is that we already have and see if it's bright enough for this one. So I'm going to start with just plain red. And then I know it's a lighter value, so I'll add a little bit of white. And then after that, we'll check and see what it needs. Okay, so if I compare these two, that's actually really close. I think this one is a little bit, the one that I've mixed is a little bit cooler. So if the straight red is too cool, then we probably need to add yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of white to lighten it up first because I noticed that the value was a little bit too dark. And now I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to see if that's what it needed. And yep, I think that's probably pretty perfect. So let's try mixing a little bit of a darker red. So I'm going to add a little more red, get it a little bit darker, and this is also a little bit duller than that bright red that I mixed up, so we're going to need to make it duller. So to dull a color, to make it less intense, you mix its complement. The complement of red is green, so I need a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow, because blue and yellow make green. So I'm going to mix some of each, and that should make it a little bit less intense. Okay, so we still need to go a little bit lighter and a little bit duller. So I'll start with adding white and see what that does. And I can tell it's still a little too bright, so let's go ahead and add the green. That's closer, still a little too dark. And I think it's still probably a little bit too bright. Let's test it and see. Yeah, it's still a little bit too bright. I think we need a little bit more green. That's really, really close. Let's add a little bit of white, and that might be it. Yep, I'm pretty happy with that. I think that's what we're going to go with. It's going to dry darker, so yeah, that's good. Let's try mixing some greens. Since I don't have any green, I have to make it. If you mix blue and yellow, you've got green. So let's start with this really light value of green. So that means I'm going to start with some white, find an empty spot on my palette, and I only need a little bit of blue and a little bit of yellow. This is a really light value. And I think I may have already gotten too dark. Yeah, that's going to be too dark. Let me add a little bit of white back in. That's closer. I think you still need a little bit more white. I could be mixing other colors if I wanted to, because I've got like multiple colors already mixed on my palette. Oh yeah, that's right. We're going with that. But I know that just in case you guys don't have other colors pre-mixed, I'm just trying to stick with straight white, red, blue, and yellow. All right, let's do this a little bit of a darker green. I'm going to add more blue and yellow to what I've got. Ooh, that's really close. That's really close. I think, at first I thought that it might be a little too light, but now I'm thinking that's a little bit duller than that. So I'm going to use the complement of green, so add a little bit of red, make it just a little duller, and let's see if that's what it needed. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that, especially because it will dry darker. It might need to be just a little darker. If I wanted to, I could add a little bit more blue, yellow, and probably a little bit of red to get it there, but I'm going to go with this. All right, let's try mixing a darker green. So something like this, I'm going to go straight blue and yellow. I don't think I'm going to need any black with this. I think blue and yellow is going to be fine. Since we're not using any white though, it's probably going to be a little bit transparent because our white really thickens up our paint. Yeah, it's kind of transparent. It's going to be a little bit harder to tell because I would have to mix several coats, and then that's going to darken it up. But I can already tell it's too bright. The value might be too dark, but it's definitely too bright. So let's add a little bit of red. Red is the complement of green, so we want a little bit of red to make it duller. That's closer. I think it might need just a little bit of white to lighten it up because it's going to dry darker, especially if I have to paint multiple coats. And it's still a little bit too cool. So I've added a little bit of yellow, and yes, I think that's good. I think purple is the hardest to mix with primary colors, so I want to make sure that I show you how to mix a variety of purples. The reason that I chose phthalo blue and bright red as the blue and red mixing color is because they make the best purple, I think. So I've just mixed blue and red to start with, and that's going to give me a pretty dark value purple. So let's see what that looks like. Also, it's going to be pretty transparent because there's no white mixed in. Now, let's compare to both of these two colors that we have. So if you compare it to this one, the value is a little bit darker, but the intensity is pretty close. But if I compare it to this one, this purple is a little bit duller. So this is a great example of showing you how to mix a complement to make something a little bit duller. So let's go ahead and make this color then. The complement of purple is yellow, so let's add a little bit of yellow. And yeah, I think that's pretty close to that color. So it may be a little hard to see on the video, but these two different purples, we have this one's brighter, that one's duller. The only difference is a little bit of yellow. Okay, so let's try mixing this color purple. It's a little bit lighter. It's also a little bit duller. So let's start with white. And we'll need blue and red because it's purple. And I know that at some point we're going to need yellow because it's duller. But let's just see what we've got so far. Yeah, it's a little too warm. Let's add a little bit of blue. Oh, added too much blue. Let me go back with some red. Okay, we're getting closer. I think it still probably needs to be a lighter value, and it also needs to be a little bit less intense. Let's add a little bit of yellow first, and then I think that's going to warm it up a lot. We're going to probably have to go back with blue. So yeah, it's a little too warm. It still might be a little too intense though. Let's add a little bit of blue to it to cool it down. This is going to make the value darker, so we'll probably need to go back with some white. Yeah, let's try adding a little bit of white. All right, value's a little closer. It's still a little too intense and it's still a little too warm. So let's add a little bit of yellow to dull it down, and let's add a little bit of blue to cool it down. Still a little bit closer. Let's cool it down just a little bit more. That's really, really close. Let's add a little bit of white and see if that's better. I think it's probably in between these two colors, and since all I did was add white, I think when it dries, the last color will dry a little bit darker, and that should be good.